Mr. Matu, I'm going to start with the questions and I'll do the introduction later. So let me start with this. Headlines screaming across the international media, from the cover of Times Magazine to literally a front page story in the Washington Post every day for nearly a fortnight. The Australian, from a country that you are very close to, Australia, screaming about the absolute chaos in India. What does it do to India's image abroad?
I think that it's terrible for India's image abroad. It dents India's carefully cultivated image. And you can't write off all these headlines as just part of a left liberal agenda. It's a most conservative papers are also echoing what the left liberal papers are echoing. The Times London, it's part of the Murdoch media group, as well as the Australian, which is a sister paper of the Murdoch group. So it does reflect very poorly on India's image, and particularly because in the last 20, 30 years, in fact, since the beginning of the IT revolution, India's image as a growing an emerging power, but particularly
Hmm.
its soft power, whether it was Bollywood or IT or literature, or the general sense of well-being that India projected, that has taken a bashing, really. That's been battered. It'll take a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's not redeemable. I think it will require a tremendous effort. And ultimately, as someone said, that your optics has to reflect a reality. So your reality on the ground has to change. Then you and I feel that sense of comfort again, because let's face it, you and I
Right.
are also part of the civil society, part of the citizenship of this country, who feel deeply vulnerable at this point of time, given the pandemic.
Mr. Matu, the External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jay Shankar, reportedly held a meeting with all the foreign envoys and told them that you need to work on this one sided world narrative that is growing against India and spoiling India's image. Now, many have said that should he have been focusing more on India's image rather than telling the envoys to actually work to get the best aid for India? What is your opinion on this?
You see, in some ways, it's a dilemma. He has a job to do. He has a
Hmm.
job to do, which is to preserve and promote India's image. So he was trying to do that. So
Hmm.
I think it's not going to work, but I don't grudge him to try and get all the various ambassadors. They're individuals who are affected by the pandemic, but also presumably have their idiosyncrasies, eccentricities. So
Hmm.
to get them to know what is the party line, that's what ministers do. This is the party line. You have to say this, don't react to the press, keep saying we hadn't, no one could have anticipated this pandemic, and then of course work towards getting as much assistance as possible. But clearly I think the MEA has to work with the Ministry of Commerce, with the Ministry of Finance, with
Hmm.
all the other various departments and ministries of the government of India, to ensure that the assistance is delivered and delivered on time. You can't have images of containers full of vaccines or other assistance like ventilators or concentrators not waiting in at the airport at Indira Gandhi International Airport, waiting for customs clearance. That shouldn't happen, because that suggests that not only are you not fully grasping the urgency of the situation, but you're not even being able to deliver on the ground when it matters most.
I mean, there are several reports coming out, and even though the government and the Niti Aayog seems to have clarified, but they still haven't given clear-cut answers on where all this 40 lakh items of foreign aid is really going. Now, 25th of April is when this foreign aid supposedly came into India, and as late as May 3rd, the states were saying we were given no directive. The first written, directive of sorts that came from the center came on May 3rd. I mean, that's a criminal delay given how people are gasping for breath. One is what India does internally, but how would internationally the community look at India when they are trying to send aid and being a true ally? How would they view this?
Three things, Maruk. One, Indian bureaucracy is naturally conservative.
Hmm.
They're not risk takers. All bureaucracies behave institutionally that way because you want to pass on that risk. You don't want to be seen as the person who used your own discretion to give clearances when there were rules put in place.
Hmm.
Secondly, the fact is that the bureaucracy is not firewalled or insulated from the rest of the country. Anecdotally, I'm told that the number of officers at a senior
Hmm.
level within
Hmm.
various ministries who are down with COVID is far greater than you and I would imagine.
Hmm.
Thirdly, I think the fact that you need a much more decentralized system, and all of government approach based on empowering joint secretaries at the joint secretary level at the very least to take decisions is critical. At the moment,
Hmm.
it seems to me that all our decision making has become centralized. In fact, one of the sticking points between what the Americans and the Indians were negotiating was that
Hmm.
the Americans wanted delivery of assistance to institutions and a much more decentralized manner in which that assistance would be delivered. But while the Indian side was insisting that it should be dealt with at an apex level, at the Prime Minister's office level,
Hmm.
or the various other centralized levels, I think that needs to go. You need to recognize that this pandemic is a national emergency. So that old style approach will
It's not
not
going to work.
work. If you have to save lives, and if you have to save, let's face it, lives and livelihood,
Hmm.
because in the first wave, you were able to at least save lives, if not livelihood. Here, you're going to, in the second wave, you're losing lives, and that those lives are going to be reflected in the dismal state of your economy in the days to come.
But I also ask you, Mr. Mattu, what happens in terms of the understanding that all these countries who've been helping India out have of the Indian system? Would they ask for accountability later, having sent this aid? Is that the normal process that happens when you send humanitarian aid to a country?
Yeah, but a country like India, which is really a big country in which
Hmm.
people are investing because of the promise of India, I don't think there'll be a kind of audit which will be demanded. I mean, internally, I think we should have an audit of all assistance required.
Hmm.
But India, fortunately, still is not an African banana republic where we'll have to provide a uh, point by point audit of exactly how each
Hmm.
product was used and delivered and who it was the beneficiary. Now, so at this moment, it's really humanitarian in the largest sense of the term. They're giving without asking. They're
Hmm.
giving because they realize that India needs assistance. Remember, it takes a lot for an India which has built up this image of Atim Nirbhar,
Economic
uh,
heft,
and
yes.
also economic heft, and also had years of autarky where you was thought of aid as being linked to various strings in terms of the commitments on foreign policy that you would have to make to accept aid. It just tells you about the gravity of the situation that today, far from being seen as the net security provider, health provider, we've just become so vulnerable that we have to accept donations, aid, assistance, come what may.
Hmm. But Mr. Matu, you were referring to the US, delaying because of the fact that they wanted a decentralized approach. Was that the only reason for the delay? Because a lot was made out of the fact that US is a friend, and despite that, there has been an inordinate delay. What is your understanding?
I think there are three reasons, frankly. First of all, the US is dealing with its own pandemic. And Joe Biden came into power with the promise of ensuring the health and safety of the citizens of America, contrasting himself with the image that Trump
Hmm.
had cultivated as a pandemic which had the responsibility of which lay firmly on Chinese shoulders, and that ultimately we would be able to conquer that pandemic. So Biden had a singularly focused domestic agenda. He wanted to get Americans vaccinated. So his preoccupations and the preoccupations of his administration were towards America's needs first.
Hmm.
Secondly, obviously, there was a degree of disconcert about India. I mean, Indians, or a section of Indians, had identified far too closely with Trump, treated some of the congressmen with not the kind of respect that you should give to elected members of
Mm.
parliament, anywhere in the world. So obviously there were caucuses, sections within the democratic, especially the democratic left, which are concerned about developments in India.
Mm.
Finally, of course, the Biden administration is like any other bureaucracy. There are all sorts of departments competing for various agendas, and within that, I think there was a time lag, and that
Okay.
time lag was reflected in the delay. But I think they got their act together when they realized that this could potentially derail bilateral relations. They might have wanted to signal their concern about India, but certainly not want to divest themselves completely of the bilateral relationship. So therefore, I think there was this delay. But now, at least the reports that are coming in from the CEOs who attended the meeting with the Secretary of State and others in Secretary of Commerce, suggest that it's an all-of-government approach, that big business and the public sector, government and corporations are coming together to launch this absolutely humongous package of assistance, part of which has already been delivered.
Another incident, and I wanted to talk to you, especially because of your strong connect to Australia. It was what can only be described as an extremely poorly worded letter by the Indian High Commissioner to the Australian paper, The Australian, asking the paper to put out a rejoinder after they put out a story with a headline that said Modi leads India out of lockdown and into a viral apocalypse. How would you calibrate this response by the Indian High Commissioner, and what would
It's
be...
a,
Yes,
it's
please go ahead.
it's an uncalibrated response. I think I think it was a completely bizarre response. When I saw that letter, and I saw that the new High Commissioner was not in place, and I thought in my kind of class conscious way that this was the IFSB, because you have an IFSB service where
Yes.
there are promotees who gradually climb up the ladder. So I said, this must be some IFSB officer who obviously is mastering his English and his diplomatic finesse on the job, and decided to be more loyal than the king, because the article itself was a reproduction of an article which had appeared in the London Times.
Yes.
No one in London had reacted to it. But Canberra and Indian High Commission, or the Deputy High Commissioner, reacted to it in a language which was obtuse, on a letterhead which reminded you of the license permit Raj, and without a sense of understanding and sensitivity of how much umbrage this would cause within those who were in any case concerned about freedom of the press. So I think it was something, and all you can say is that it was an overzealous diplomat who reacted ferociously, out of turn. I think from what the newspapers have reported, one of the good things that Minister Jai Shankar did when he spoke to all the envoys was to tell them, please stay calm. I mean, you don't have
control
to
your emotions.
If you start reacting to every single report, then all your time and energy will be spent on, as you said, the number of stories which hurt India today are so many that you would have a fledged propaganda effort directed at only that. No, India should be wise enough, big enough, mature enough, magnanimous enough to realize this is how the free world works. This is how the free, vibrant, robust press works in most countries, and not point fingers. We used to do it to the Americans. I mean, if the Americans start reacting, after all, the amount of bad press that America gets, in some ways, it's a strength of your stature. I remember there was a time when you saw an American and you blamed him personally for everything going on in Vietnam, and said, but I am opposed to the Vietnam War. So it doesn't matter, but your government has done that. He said, but I'm not my government. So not making a distinction between various...
But if I go that far back, even during Trump, you were pretty much blaming every American for putting him in office.
Yeah, absolutely. And every American was looked at with suspicion, even though he was a left-wing anti-Vietnam War a protester. So I would
Hmm.
have imagined that even Bob Dylan, if he had come to India at that time, would have been seen as a CIA agent.
No, I mean, there are so many incidents that have happened in the past fortnight. Another one which I want your opinion on is that two embassies, the Philippines and the New Zealand embassy, put out these tweets asking for help. And a young youth Congress leader uh, came to their rescue, got the oxygen cylinders, and then they got the uh, strong demarche, I don't know, but they got a strong worded letter, or perhaps were told that they shouldn't have done this. Now, according to you, who is at fault? What would have happened in the back channel talks? What would have happened in the background? And what is the normal course that perhaps these embassies should have taken, or perhaps the Indian External Affairs Ministry?
I think we are living in unprecedented times. When things go wrong, things go badly wrong. Now, success has many parents and failure is an orphan. So, who went wrong?
Yes.
Let me describe the narrative as I saw it. There
Hmm.
is this IYC group or individual who seems to have almost extraterrestrial power to arrange oxygen cylinders. I have sent SOSs, desperately needing plasma or concentrators, and hashtagged him as or tagged him in that mail. So obviously they're a dedicated group which is delivering. You have a charge d'affaires or your head of chancery or someone who's in charge of the health and safety of the citizens of the Philippines embassy or the diplomats of the Philippines embassy or New Zealand embassy decides perhaps either as a precaution or because there
Hmm.
is a need to secure some oxygen cylinders, either to provide them to patients within the embassy or just in case there's an emergency. This thing blows up and Jairam Ramesh, or at least in the version on the narrative that I saw,
Yes.
Jairam
Hmm.
Ramesh decides to finger point at Jaishankar and says, so now India has abdicated its responsibility, the Youth Congress is delivering. And I guess Dr. Jaishankar, who normally is doesn't react. In fact, his Twitter handle is mostly emotion free and very surgical in its incisiveness,
Responses.
suddenly
Hmm.
responds rather
Out of
uncharacteristically.
character.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, I have no idea about what the final outcome of that was, but it was a controversy which could easily have not come about. Obviously, there is a situation, a national calamity, where, as you know, and I know from your Twitter handles, that we are all trying to take care of ourselves and our friends.
Yes.
And the state apparatus, especially in terms of hospital care, health care, seems to have been in deep distress. And I
Yes.
use that word euphemistically.
Hmm.
Now, if that is the situation, as a responsible member of an embassy, obviously you want to do it without the glare of publicity, ensure the safety of your diplomatic corps. But this
Hmm.
blows up and leads to almost a minor diplomatic fracas, which could have been avoided. In other words, I think the situation itself is so explosive that each little incident can be magnified into something much more devious and something much more serious than perhaps might be
What it
actually the
actually.
case.
This hasn't happened, at least I haven't read of this, but I have a feeling that invariably there are going to be comparisons made between Mr. Jaishankar and his predecessor, Sushma Swaraj, given that she was so accessible, given that she was going down to the last mile and talking to individuals. Do you think that is likely to happen? And do you think he will be judged for being, in a way, almost inaccessible?
Let me say this with an open bias. I like Dr. Jaishankar. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
cerebral. I think he's the closest that you come to having a Henry Kissinger like person who's well read, well uh, uh, experienced. Have worked in a task force with his father. So his
Mm-hmm.
pedigree, his scholarship, is something that I respect, genuinely respect. How many other foreign ministers would write a book, an original book, the
Right.
Indian way, while in office? Not very, and he's extremely hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in a crisis like this, sometimes you require, as you pointed out, the humane approach, the,
Yes.
the personal touch, which Madam Sushma Swaraj, peace be upon her soul, demonstrated through deed and word and deed. I think it would be great if we had the heart of Sushma Swaraj and the head of Jai Shankar together, working together in some ways and delivering both
Hmm.
compassion and cerebral energy. But history is always, you can never look that far. I'm not someone who can forecast how history will judge them.
Hmm.
But I think we still, Dr. Jaishankar still has the time to perhaps overcome this unprecedented difficult circumstances. Um, it's sad, it's unfortunate, but he's really batting on a weak wicket with which favors the spinners. He's learned only how to face pace. So what do you do with that? You try
Yes.
and bat as well as you can, knowing that this is not going to be your day.
It's a beautiful analogy that you put there, Mr. Matu. For a prime minister who has been obsessed with optics, for an administration that has been obsessed with optics, for a prime minister who spent a large part of his tenure going and meeting world leaders, traversing across the continents, what is the world thinking of Mr. Modi in particular at this point?
It's a it's a loaded question, but yes, at the moment, I think the jury is out. The jury, which was almost convinced that uh, Mr. Modi is what the doctor ordered for India, suddenly seems to be in deep division now. And the jury's foreman is not sure what verdict he should deliver to the judge. In other words, I think much will depend on how post Bengal, post Kerala, post these elections, post the Kumbh Mela, and post this pandemic, if we can ever think of the pandemic as post in any real sense, we'll have to see the new Mr. Modi. We saw Mr. Modi, the powerful Mr. Modi. We've seen Mr. Modi, the sagely Mr. Modi. Now we have to see Mr. Modi, the wise, compassionate Mr. Modi. Remember that Mr. Modi has one absolutely brilliant ability, which every individual should have, is not be a prisoner of your own past, is to be able to reinvent yourself. Unfortunately, many of us are held back by what we think are shibboleths of the past. But today, if Mr. Modi reinvents himself in that compassionate, humane Prime Minister of all Indians, I think he has a genuine chance of regaining the huge amount of respect that a section of Indians and a large section of global public opinion had for him.
Mr. Matu, for your brilliant insights. Thank you so much for speaking to me on the note.
Thank you, Maruk. Always a pleasure to speak to you, and more power to you.
Thank you, sir.